you can have a bad guy. I'm okay. There might be a psychological need. I don't know. But don't let the bad guy be in this building or in your own home either. And of course, I don't have control over that one, but, at work, I can let the guys know, I don't want the bad guy to be in this building.
Today, I'm excited to welcome Pete Kuehn to the show. Now, Pete and I first met over LinkedIn and got to kind of chatting back and forth, and I just asked him if he wanted to come on to the show to share his lean story. And what I appreciate about this episode is Pete's willing to share some personal stories from his childhood and really kind of talking about really his full journey of lean, from even just growing up in more of what he would describe as a minimalist type upbringing with his folks who didn't have a lot of extra money, and what that taught him and how that taught him to, use what you got effectively. And this is definitely seems to have spilled over into his professional life. So I just really appreciated Pete's honesty and his vulnerability as well. So show notes for this episode can be found over at gembapodcast.com. Just look for episode 309. Again, gembapodcast.com, and look for episode 309. Okay, enough from me. Let's get to the show. Pete, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Pretty good.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. We've had some fun chatting before we hit record and had a lot of conversation over LinkedIn. So I appreciate you carving out some time to come on to the show.
You bet. Thanks for having me on, Ron.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right. Well, so Pete, we got an interesting topic. I think we're going to kind of probably focus a little bit on respect for people's side of lean, which is I believe, and I think you agree, the most important part of lean, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But before we get to that, I know you listen to the show. We sort of like to begin with our guests sharing a quote. So do you have one that you want to share? Yes,
I do. And the quote is, go see, ask why, and show respect.
Mm. So what's that mean to you?
One of the reasons I'm attracted to it is go see means kind of jump in, ask why, be curious about people, and then show respect is build the bridge. And one of the things I've come to realize lately is that each one of those involves people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It sure does. Yeah, lean doesn't, sometimes we talk about the factory of the future and all the rest of it, have a bunch of robots or whatever, but in the end, there's going to be some people orchestrating all those robots and making things happen. So yeah, it's at the heart of what we're all about.
Right.
Beautiful. Hey, so tell us a little bit about your background, Pete. Tell us how you first got involved with all this continuous improvement stuff, and just tell us about Pete.
I've always enjoyed working with my hands, and got a job in a machine shop years ago, and actually started off digging trenches for this guy. He came up from Southern California, moved his whole shop up to Northern California, and bought an old logging a mill site, and started his machine shop there. And so with 40 acres, he had a lot of outside work that needed to be done. And so I had no machine shop experience, but I knew how to dig a trench. So I started digging trenches. And then when it started raining, fall came, it started raining. He asked me, you want to come in the shop and run a machine in the shop? Mm-hmm. And I said, sure. I'd always loved working with my hands. And so I still remember that very first machine I got to run. It was a Bergmaster drill press. And of course, the guy that gave me a little bit of training, he was more than happy to let that job go because he'd been drilling holes for I don't know how long. But removing the metal out of the holes and knowing that when I shape the metal, it's going to stay that way for a long, long time. Not like building something out of wood or like that. So I definitely fell in love with the trade right then on that first day.
Cool. So how did you get into continuous improvement and that side of things?
That I learned the word continuous improvement much later on, but found that I practiced a lot of continuous improvement in that machine shop where I learned the machinist trade.
Okay, so that was, I guess, kind of your entry into the world of work, if you will, but what about lean and continuous improvement? How did you first get exposed to that, or was it informally at first and then formally later, or how did that go?
So I would have to say informally first, because I wasn't formally introduced to lean till a couple years ago, but informally, I'm going to say the first part of lean I learned as a kid.
Okay.
And growing up on welfare and being the oldest of 6 kids, I saw my mom do incredible things with very little. Mm-hmm. And those kind of images and things that I learned as a kid stuck with me a long time, and brought those forward.
So, talk about those. I mean, that's obviously a deeply personal, so I don't want to probe too deeply, and feel free to share as much or as little as you want to. But I mean, talk about that those times growing up with your folks, where you might not have had a lot of money or whatnot. Like, how did that kind of? I mean, what kind of lessons did you learn there that might, have parallels to what we're trying to do with lean?
One kind of a funny little story is, did you know that if you plug in a 12-volt TV to a car battery, that as that car battery goes down, the picture screen actually starts shrinking.
No, and I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either until, we're watching the TV, probably an I Love Lucy or something, on the car battery, and we'd have to shut it off during commercials. And that would charge up the battery enough so you could watch a little bit more. So that is not a very, you can't take that forward as an adult. But there were some instances where we had very little, but still survived, still made do with what we had. An extreme story might be we had actually a toilet paper ration in our family. So my mom made a game out of it, and we to see who could use the least amount of toilet paper. Now, this story might be a little ridiculous, or like, okay, yeah, he's talking about toilet paper. But my sister was my hero, because for one day she used 1 square of toilet paper. Again, how, it's extreme stories. How does it help me as an adult? Again, that from a lean perspective,
it sounds more like a minimalist. Is kind of like what I'm hearing. Is like,
there we go. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. I can really, I have an overabundance of stuff, and that's one of my attractions to lean is that I've been practicing lately. Is how many steps can I remove? How many items can I remove out of this process? And the guys still get the same result. Mm-hmm. They still make a part that the customer will pay for, and I just removed, a process out. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've been learning from one of the lean guys there where I work is how we as maybe a company or a nation, tend to like to add things. We just want to keep adding processes to fix the outcome. So that part of it, I'm very attracted to. Probably from my childhood, the minimalist side of it is how little do I need to still get the same result?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when you look back on like the history of Toyota. I don't know how much you've studied them, Pete, but after the war, they were the whole country of Japan was in a bad way, obviously, and they were lacking resources. And this little company over there trying to build, trucks and then cars and then Jeeps and all on the same assembly line. And, they had to use what we would say now their wits over their wallet, right? And
Exactly.
So I think maybe growing up when you didn't have a lot, maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like, I honestly, I've not really shared this on the podcast before, but I had a similar situation growing up with my mom. She also was struggling to raise some kids and whatnot, and Yeah. So I think there's a lot of valuable lessons in struggling a little bit. You know, not that I don't want anybody to think you got to struggle to be successful at lean or anything like that. But I think there is something to minimalism and trying to figure out how you can do things with less, and why more isn't always better. And obviously more isn't always better within lean. You can have more and more inventory. That's not going to help you. That's only going to hurt you, right? It's over, you're going to have overproduction. You're going to have a waste of inventory and all the rest of it. So
the Toyota, my understanding, like you said, was they were struggling. They needed to turn the customer order into cash as quickly as possible. And like you said, what I learned, it wasn't until after the war that they actually, quote, started to get lean. And I see companies do lean for two reasons. One, they do it because if they don't, they're going to go bankrupt. Or two, they do it because, we can make more money? Of course we want to make more money. And I don't know, again, I am new to lean. That may sound too basic, but that's just my observation that I've been getting out of it. It seems like the companies that are more successful at lean are the ones that are hungry.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's truth for sure. Those two are most definitely personas, if you will, of the lean of the lean journey. I mean, companies that are struggling. There's a famous book called The Goal. I don't know if you've read it, but it's more theory of constraints, but lean in disguise, basically. Sorry, all the TOC guys are out there. It's not lean, but yeah, his factory's failing, his marriage is in shambles and all the rest of it, and here comes this wise, guru to help them, and kind of turns it around, right? Turns the factory around, turns his life around. So that's one side of it. And you're right. I mean, there are folks out there who want to, be a more successful company and make more money. So for sure, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? I mean, if you're a for-profit company, go for it, right? But I would say there's probably a third persona as well, and that's the companies who just genuinely get it and they genuinely buy into the idea that they want to make the world a better place, and they want to enjoy their work. They want the people that work for them to enjoy their work. They want to help humanity, right, at large. And I would say, if you can fall into that world, that's where the magic happens, right? Now, it's not to say that one day that company's going to have some financial hardship and find themselves on the brink of bankruptcy. But if they have that foundation of genuinely respecting people and trying to help people, they're going to be so much further ahead, than anybody else is. Paul Akers, one of my good friends, 2-second lean guy, he says like, fix what bugs you and quit wasting, energy on things that you shouldn't be wasting energy on, right? Like doing anything with waste, because if you can remove all that, then you can elevate your thinking, elevate your way of working to a higher plane, and that's when real success is going to fall into place.
Yes.
Yeah.
So back on your theme of respect for people.
Okay.
So I got in the machine shop. I got exposure to processes and how improving processes gets a good result. And one of the next, quote, unofficial learnings of lean that I had was my relationship with my wife. It was I enjoyed and got rewarded in that machine shop, and would want to spend as many hours a day as possible in that machine shop. And I had a wife, and I was, we joke now, but I told her, I said, "Well, I told you I loved you when we got married. What's the big deal?" And so I had quite a learning curve to go there. But after many years of therapy and counseling and good guidance from wise people, I learned that just because she thinks differently than I do, doesn't mean she's odd or weird or anything. In fact, I've learned, and I share this with the guys that I work with, she has value, and maybe even more than I might have in some instances. And the little story there was, I'm at work, I'm struggling with an issue, I can't figure out, okay, what's the right solution to this, and come home, share it with my wife, and she goes, "Oh, have you thought about doing it this way?" And I was like, "Oh, that is brilliant." I would have not thought of that myself, but because she does think differently, she was able to come up with that. And that's something that I am bringing forward into my current lean journey is, yes, learn the processes. And, okay, what, you think differently than I do? Tell me more.
Yeah, tell me more. That's a very powerful statement, right? But it's sometimes hard to say.
Right. And one of the building trust is something that I found with the guys. When I say tell me more, do they think, they're gonna tell me something and I'm gonna use it against them? What's the old story with the lean? The guys with the stopwatches come in, and the guy's like, "Look how fast I can do this," and then they do it in 1 minute, and then the other shift comes on, and they're like, "We got to do it in a minute now." I was like, "Yeah, that's the standard has been set." And so the people got wind of that. And so they saw the timekeepers coming, and they worked slower to set the pace slower. And in the culture I'm trying to develop is to not have that. So one of the, along the trust lines, one of the stories that occurred with me at work recently, and I saw that as a huge breakthrough in developing trust and respect for people, is I do the scheduling for the cell, how many parts per hour they're going to get. And so I'm writing down my numbers, and the lead comes up to me, and I'd been maybe 4 months at the company, so they're still checking me out. And he comes up to me, and he kind of real soft voice says, I'm scheduling 2 per hour. He comes up to me and says, "We can make 3 per hour." I'm like, "Tell me more." And he says, "Yeah, all we have to do is turn this this switch here, and it'll skip that step." And that, for me personally, was a huge breakthrough in earning the trust of that cell.
Yeah, because you listened, right? Or you were willing to hear their ideas.
Right. And not use it against them, not say, "Well, how come you didn't tell me this when I first started or, before?" Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly. So let's talk a little bit then about, about the whole idea of respect. Talk a little bit about, if you listen to the older episodes, it used to be a question I would ask people: what does respect for people mean to you? But, talk about that. Talk about respect and how you feel we can, how we lead thinkers can practice it.
Right. So there's many ways to show respect. The first one I might try is, I got to figure out where that person is. What do they value? And so first they're coming in, they're working, so I'm going to value that in them, and kind of build the kind of a mutual respect what they're already doing, and the respect, because people are complicated. Machines are simple, right? You press the green button, it goes. Red button, it stops. People have different communication styles, different DISC scores, and then all of that can vary day to day. So getting to know the person, I think, would be the first step in respecting another person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. What else?
One of the things I use with the guys and myself and my wife and everybody that I interact with is the idea of the emotional bank account by Stephen Covey.
Yeah.
You heard of that one? Of course. Yeah. And so every person I interact with, I'm either making a deposit or making a withdrawal. And something that I consciously try to do with the guys is make deposits. Go through and make a deposit with them anytime I can, and knowing what their love language, so to speak, is, so that I'm making a deposit that they receive as a deposit, right? It's not according to me if it's a deposit or not. It's according to them if it's a deposit. So I'm making deposits, and I want to fill their bank account, so to speak, because I know there will be a time, maybe I'm having a bad day or coming across wrong, that I'm going to make a withdrawal. And I do not want anybody to work on reserve, if at all possible, because that respect for people again. And so if I can make deposits regularly, then when I make a withdrawal, we're still good. There's still plenty of reserve there. And my drive for that is I have worked on empty or reserve before. The days are very long. I'm definitely not as productive because I know how to, years on a machine. I know how to look busy, but run the machine pretty slow. I think I've mentioned that to my bosses. Hopefully that. So the people are my biggest variable in getting lean to grow in an area. So if I can learn about the people, work with their language, make deposits. I have one guy, if I make a big deal in our group about an improvement he made, his chest puffs out and he's all excited about it. Another guy, if I put his name on the board, even the smallest public recognition is actually a withdrawal. So I honor that. I said, no, I go to him personally. Hey, let him know. And I let him know I will not bring your name up in public because I know that's a withdrawal. And, for me being a very social person, that it takes a little bit for my brain to wrap around, but that's a truth. Yeah.
Well, and it goes back to what you said initially of getting to know the person, right? And you aren't able to do that if you don't know the person, you don't know their personality. And even I would say I've learned over the years it's a cultural thing. Certain parts of the world receive recognition in very, very different ways. Some people will be devastated if you called them to the front of the room, whereas others are going to be completely offended if they're not. Right? So,
right. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's great. One parallel question to this. So we were talking about this emotional, this bank account, if you will, and this involves others. But what about yourself, Pete? How do you ever try to deposit things into your own account for yourself? In other words, help. Physician heal thyself kind of thing. Have you ever thought of it that way?
Yes, that is a great question, and I can't give what I don't have.
So how do you go about that? I mean, how do you help yourself? How do you put deposits into your own account so you then have more to give? Is it learning new things, or I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
So first, learning that I had value.
Yeah.
It's kind of a loaded question, if I could, that I have value enough to make deposits, and those deposits need to be put in the right place. I thought working 12, 14 hours a day was making deposits, but that was not beneficial for me to make deposits in other people's account, in that for me, for my style.
I think it's important for everyone. The things that I've personally learned is, if I'm, I have a really, really dear friend and close friend, and who has to is more of a caregiver, of a loved one, and this person explains that they've got to take care of themselves, right? First, because if they're not caring for themselves, if they're not exercising, if they're not getting enough sleep, if they're not eating well, those sorts of things. Like, how in the world could they ever provide care for their loved one? And it's just like on the airplane, put your own oxygen mask on first before you take care of your little kids, because if you're passing out, how are you going to help anyone? Right. So, so I just feel it's important for all of us to reflect on that and not forget that, yeah, we want to help other people, and we should never stop that, but we do have to take care of ourselves. We have to lead ourselves, in order to help and really maximize our ability to lead others and to help others and to help the world. So yeah, whether that's, physically, spiritually, professionally, in education, whatever, I think it's super important to not ever forget that.
Right. Exactly. And I have to be full before I can give, and getting enough sleep, getting exercise, eating right, and also the education and the spiritual life is huge in filling up and being able to see the big picture. That is something actually this morning that I was struggling with. I had to remind myself, Pete, remember the big picture. Remember the big picture.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's right. Everything's okay from this perspective.
Yeah.
The details might be a little frustrating and confusing and struggle with, but Pete, remember the big picture, and go outside, take some breaths. Okay, go back and do it again.
Exactly. So, I understand you have a 9/11 story.
Let's see. That was something that was a revelation to me during that time. And so I share it with whenever there's people that struggle with somebody else. Basically, growing up in machine shops and on the manufacturing floor, it always seemed like there was always somebody that was getting picked on. And it almost seemed like human nature that, it's like there was one guy out of the 10 that had to work inside the building that would be vented on or get anger even directed towards. And I thought, okay, maybe that's just how it goes. Until that day of 9/11. And I saw not only did the, quote, bad guy leave the building, the bad guy left the country. And for a short time, everybody worked together. We saw the flags fly in, and everybody appreciated each other. And so I tell that story sometimes when I am supervising somebody that might be struggling with somebody else, and that you can have a bad guy. I'm okay. There might be a psychological need. I don't know. But don't let the bad guy be in this building or in your own home either. And of course, I don't have control over that one, but, at work, I can let the guys know, I don't want the bad guy to be in this building. And so that's the little, my takeaway from that.
Yeah. No, it's pretty powerful. So, I know you've read quite a few books, in your journey here. What are some of your favorites?
The Toyota Way is one that, has many gems in that one. The Goal was another one.
Yeah.
A lot of the Goal, I have to say, went over my head. I was trying to grasp all of that.
Yeah.
And the other one that probably had a personal effect on me was the beginning of my official lean journey was a class with Gary Conner here in Oregon. And he gave me a book, Lean Manufacturing, that he wrote. And so because I had met the author and was encouraged by him, and he encouraged me in my lean growth, that book has a special place.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right. Well, Pete, someone's listening to this and maybe they're just kind of getting started on their own lean journey. Or maybe they've hit a speed bump or two or three, and they're struggling. What kind of words do you have for that person? Speak to that person.
I was thinking of a question, but it was worded differently in my head, and it was, what's my personal biggest struggle in applying lean daily? And maybe that is the same question. And for me personally right now is time. It doesn't seem like I have enough time on the manufacturing floor to implement lean. And that's kind of a struggle because my passion's with it, my heart's with it. I'm seeing the bigger picture and the growth that can be there. And one of the Adam, one of the guys I work with, he said a great quote, we don't want to do lean and then go back to our job. We want doing lean to be our job, to be more incorporated in with it. And so, he's a really smart guy, so I try to take that and how does that fit into my life? And so any encouragement is there will be ups and downs. And to reach out to other people who are in the lean community and get encouragement from them. There's lots of great podcasts, of course, on Gimba Academy, and there's YouTubes that you have and that other people have. And so keep filling up on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that your colleague there who's talking about, it's just kind of the way we work. It's sort of like, I always mess it up, but the funny story of the fish, swimming by, like, how's the water? And all of a sudden, one guy's like, what's water? And they're swimming in it, right? But if we truly embrace lean and this way of thinking and working, it's no longer lean. It's the air around us and the water around us, if you will, or if you're a fish, and it's just the way that we do things, the way that we think, the way that we behave, the way we treat others, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yes. And how do we get there?
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think?
Right. That, by talking with you, by surrounding myself with people who are where I want to be, by reading their books, watching their, just filling myself with that information. I said somewhere along the line that I caught the lean bug. I drank the Kool-Aid. There's no going back now. I come home and my wife is actually one of the leanest people I know. And so I try to watch and observe a lot from her. And I can see things in the kitchen. How it's like, oh, I see why you put that there. It's like, maybe I could apply that, something like that at work.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. And I would say, another thing you can do is, like, how do you do it? Is you take one step and make a prediction of what you think is going to happen, evaluate what actually happened, and then reflect on what you learned. Right. And then you just keep doing that. You just keep repeating that process. And, that's scientific thinking. That's lean. Right. That's what we're trying to do. So
exactly. And the for me personally, where I struggle with that is I want not just baby steps. I can see if we take this huge step, we can get here. And so there's sometimes a frustration in that we have to take baby steps. Yeah. But again, remember the big picture, Pete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and then sometimes I think it's okay to take a big step, but again, I think there's no shortcut to asking the question, what do you think is going to happen? And then reflecting on what actually happened and what did you learn? And you might learn that, hey, we nailed it. We got it right. And here's what we learned. And it was a good thing. Or you might learn that, boy, we shouldn't do that again. So I wouldn't say a big step or a small step is appropriate or one's better than the other. Typically, we just want to take a big enough step to where we can learn something, and as long as you're doing that and you're adapting and you're not making the same mistakes again and again, this is really the direction we should be going. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, Pete, what's the best way for folks to connect with you if they want to reach out to you? On LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I have the LinkedIn account, of course, which is where we connected there.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have the Pete Kuehn Lean at Gmail.
Okay. Spell your last name, Pete.
Which is linked on my LinkedIn.
Yeah.
My last name is Kuehn.
Okay. Kuehn. Got it. Pete Kuehn. All right. Well, we'll link to that in the show notes. So let me see where we're at here on episode. This is 309. So gembapodcast.com. This will be episode 309, and we'll link to everything. And everybody hit Pete up. And appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you sharing some personal stories. That's not always easy to do, but I think it's valuable when we can do that and hear and learn from others. So thank you.
You bet. And thank you, Ron, for sharing a little bit of your story, too. That makes it personal to me.
Yeah, awesome. All right, you take care and get back out there to the Gemba and see what you can learn, Pete.
You bet. Thank you.
All right, take care. Thanks for listening to the Gemba Academy podcast. Now, we invite you to take a no-strings-attached, fully functional test drive of GembaAcademy.com. Gain immediate access to more than 1,000 Lean and Six Sigma learning resources, all free of charge, at GembaAcademy.com.